Welcome back to ARC Maine, exploring and learning the history behind one of Portland's oldest cemeteries.
And you can do exactly that this upcoming Sunday from 2 to 3 p.m. Here to explain more is Kip DeSare and Jonathan Monroe, both stewards of the Western Cemetery. Good morning, guys. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting us.
So first off, for anyone who doesn't know where the Western Cemetery is located within the city, can you give kind of a description where it is in Portland?
It's in the West End, right near the Western Prom.
Okay, sweet.
And as we mentioned, the Western Cemetery is one of the oldest in Portland and the first design cemetery filled with so much history. Can you kind of expand upon that a little bit?
Well, the Western Cemetery was the second cemetery after Eastern Cemetery was full. Eastern Cemetery had served as the main cemetery for over 100 years, and they were looking for more space, and the West End was largely undeveloped then, and they bought some land there, and it opened in 1830 and was an active cemetery through most of the 19th century. And then in the 20th century, very little burials there.
Interesting.
So it's a historic cemetery.
Yes, nice. And then does it kind of play into the other cemeteries that were built in the Portland area after that, like Evergreen?
Once Evergreen Cemetery opened in 1852, that started becoming the primary cemetery and is still the major cemetery. Although Western Cemetery is no new burials there at all.
Oh, okay.
Let's talk about these tours and how these started. How long have they been going on for, and what do they consist of?
We've been doing it for about 2 years, and we tell, well, two things really. They tell the story of some of the people who are buried there, stories which have been almost forgotten, because for many years the Western Cemetery was really neglected and even vandalized, so we've lost a lot of the headstones. Jonathan can talk a little bit more about that. So we talk about some of the lives of the people, the 19th century stories of people who lived in Portland, and we also tell the story of what the stewards of the Western Cemetery are doing right now to try to repair and restore the place.
Which actually, that goes into our next question. How did you both get involved, and what work do you do as part of the stewards? And you guys are also a registered nonprofit corporation.
Yeah, you want to?
Yeah, in 2020, a friend of mine, after COVID hit, was walking through the cemetery regularly because we live in the neighborhood, and he said, boy, he said, that place is a mess. We should do something about it. And he was a Naval Academy grad, so I just saluted, right? But then we needed to get trained in the technical attributes of trying to repair gravestones and similar work. And luckily, there's a Maine Old Cemetery Association that sponsors training every summer with a professional gravestone conservator named Joe Farinini from New York State. And so I went in 2021 up to Andover, Maine to get that training. And since then, we've had another member trained by him, and we also were trained by the group Spirits Alive in Eastern Cemetery, which had been repairing gravestones for 15 years.
Very interesting.
What does it mean for you to be involved in this? What is it about for you? Is it about respect?
It is. Well, I briefly mentioned that for about 100 years, Western Cemetery was completely neglected. And in fact, we lost a lot of headstones due to vandalism and just weathering. And so right now, there's only about 1/4 of the original burials are identified with a stone that's there. So I think it's a way of honoring the people who were there, and people whose lives are almost forgotten about, especially since many of the families, because of the ravages of infectious disease of the day, there's whole families that were wiped out. So there's not going to be any descendants of those people looking out for their graves.
So the people that join you guys on these tours, is there something that they always say to you at the end of the tours that they take away from learning all that history of the cemetery?
Yeah, I mean, I think they enjoy learning about 19th century Portland. We have sea captains, sailors, and one important part of it is we have a lot of Irish immigrants, because this was a time with the Great Famine in Ireland. A lot of immigrants came to Portland, and this was where the first wave of immigrants were buried. So we tell the story of the immigrant Irish as well.
Why would you encourage people to maybe take one of these tours?
Well, people in the neighborhood often stroll through this area. It's worth noting that it's not only a historic cemetery, but also a public green open space. and it's probably one of the largest. It has 500 trees and so forth. So we actually manage the landscape as well as the stones. And we have people who are dedicated to bringing native plants and native wildflowers into the cemetery at the same time that we're repairing the gravestones. So there are many different kinds of things that a volunteer can do. We had a volunteer, for example, who helped Kip research the biographies of the of the people buried there, and she is a descendant of one of the families from Massachusetts. So it isn't necessary to actually come to the cemetery to be a volunteer.
Interesting. So I just actually recently read on your guys' website that the Western Cemetery was just recently added to the National Register of Historic Places. Can you touch briefly about what that means to you guys?
Well, it's very important because we're in the midst of a capital fund drive trying to raise $250,000 to recreate the infrastructure that used to exist. We're going to install a 1/4 mile of fencing along the western prom side. We're going to put in a tool shed that used to exist there and a water line so that we can do the repairs much more easily. Right now we're importing the materials and tools from our basements and our garages. The registration allows us to get grant money because it's recognized as an important, significant national cemetery, primarily because it was one of the first cemeteries that was laid out in a design.
Interesting.
And where can people find out more? And the tours are on Sundays, correct?
Sundays at 2, although we can arrange a separate tour if somebody's interested.
And what's the best way for them to do that?
Just come at 2 o'clock on a Sunday and meet by the Davies Gate, which is the main entrance on Vaughan Street. They can also check our website, which is an easy one to remember. It's westerncemetery.me.
Perfect.
Amazing. Thank you both so much for coming on. Such fascinating work you do.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate your time.
We appreciate your having us.
Well.